and welcome to another edition of the All Angels podcast. I am Daniel Garcia, and our special guest kicking off Angels preview week is none other than Mark Gubicaza. How are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, how you doing, my friend? How's everything going, man? Wish everything's going well for you, everybody there.
Thank you very much for jumping on and getting ready for Angel season 2021. Almost feels like a year in the making with the short season in 2020. So some changes for you coming up in this season. Obviously, we got the first sample of you and your new co-host, the play-by-play, Darren Sutton. So how did it feel? How did it go?
Yeah, it feels like we've been doing it for a long, long time. A couple of years ago, we did a post-game, pre-post down in spring training, so I kind of know him a little bit. Jose and I, we've been working a number of these games, and that's been going real well. Our group this year, I'm going to miss my brother Victor, obviously, but Darren, he's a pro. He knows exactly what he loves the game. He has such a passion for Angel baseball to boot. So this is going to be a lot of fun going forward. Matty V is going to be involved here before too long. And tell you what, Angel fans are really going to get a treat with Matty and Darren doing this. They're play-by-play, and they're really, really good at what they do.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing all three of you guys at the same time. Like you mentioned, you, Jose, and then also Matt/Darren, depending on the game. But I had Darren on last week, and he kind of talked a little bit about the process of how kind of the interview process. And one of the things that caught my ear and was really interested in is that you guys did the Mike Trout, passing Tim Salmon to 300, like rebroadcasted it. So, kind of. And, he said he never watched it because he kind of wanted to be in the moment. But for you, the guy that was actually there in real life, how was that for you? Because, do you remember what you said? So you got to try. Are you going to try to change it up, or how did you play that?
It was funny because I did a few of those different demos, and we did the same game every time. And
oh wow, okay.
Our producer who worked those games itself, the live game. It was funny. He played it back. He goes, what's weird? You almost said the same exact thing, but I didn't remember. I was so caught up in that moment, talking with Tim Salmon all the way through and having him there. And then I remember when Trout hit the home run, he's looking up up at the booth, and I'm waving over at Tim Salmon. I go, Trout, he's trying to say hi to you. Hi, dude. He goes, oh, then he looked down, and that whole moment was really good. Consider how crazy of a sprint of a season, slow start, great month of September for the team to have Trout do that on Mike Trout weekend. I think that was pretty special to be able to tie and then pass Tim that time.
So obviously another big thing that's going to happen this year that didn't happen last year is that there's going to be some kind of fans in the stands, minimal at first and hopefully gradually get more and more as the season goes on. How much are you looking forward to that being in, you were in an empty stadium calling games? How much are you looking forward to some kind of fans being back this year?
It's huge. The players have already voiced their opinion on that. They feed off of fans. And the same thing as a player I did, and in this side of it too as an analyst. So you're looking down in the stands. You could feel the energy at the ballpark. Even I am going into the stadium and even leaving the stadium. I love that interaction between the fans and myself. So to have them back there to live and be part of those moments going forward. Because, we have some pretty good players. Shohei Otani's been off the chart so far. You have Rendon, you got Trouty doing Trouty stuff, and Albert Pujols, he's on his way to Cooperstown for a reason, and he's doing things that are really special right now. So to have them there, to be part of that, to celebrate with us, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. And I know how much you love holidays, and I kind of thought of this to myself. And, when spring training starts and pitchers and catches report, that to me that's kind of like October. That's kind of like Halloween. It kind of gets you in there ready, but it's not the big holidays. And then you have spring training games, and then that's kind of like Thanksgiving. It's getting closer, but it's not quite Christmas. And to me, I feel like Christmas Day is opening day. That's how I feel. And I'm really excited to have opening day, April 1st again, home against the White Sox. So let's talk about this 2021 season coming up. Pitching has always been kind of a deal with the Angels the last handful of years. How do you feel about the guys they brought in to help that? Quintana, Iglesias, Cobb, just to kind of name a few.
Yeah, I'm really feeling comfortable with this situation right now. And I know going with a 6-man rotation, Bundy was a great acquisition last year. He looks even better this spring training. And it's not easy to be able to throw his breaking ball, his curveball slider, and even his split change in that thin air up in Arizona, yet he's been able to do it. Heaney Canning, we're seeing some good things out of there too. But I'm really excited. Quintana is throwing the ball very, very well. And I kind of compare him a little bit to Anthony Rendon, which they seem like they don't have a pulse. Yet they slow the game down so well, and they perform in those big moments. And I think he's made some adjustments in his mechanics. A number of the pitchers, including Shohei Otani and Alex Cobb, worked their way to drive line up in the Seattle area, really to refine their skills on the mound. And we're seeing some pretty special things. Alex Cobb, I mentioned. Jim Palmer, the minute that the Angels picked him up, he called me up and said, "You're going to love this guy." Fastball has increased his velocity over the last few seasons. We're seeing 95 so far. His splitter's great. He's a tough competitor, gets a lot of ground balls as well. So there's some really good depth in there. And then you look down to see guys like, Reed Depner's the way he's throwing, Jaime Barria, Patrick Sandoval. So for once, we're seeing some really good depth. And a name I love too is Chris Rodriguez, who could either be a spot starter, guy out of the bullpen. And Raisel Iglesias, I love his stuff in that back end closing game. So you finally have that guy settle in that spot where you're comfortable in that ninth inning, maybe even able to get you an out or two in the eighth inning. There's some really good arms down in the bullpen. Overall, the staff, probably the strongest one I've seen in a number of years now. Staying healthy, and the big guy there, Shohei Otani, he could be your ace of your staff, obviously. He's throwing 102 miles an hour. So there's a lot of positives going forward. You just got to keep the health and keep going forward as far as building momentum. And like I've told, even on broadcast, these guys, and especially in the starting staff, have to compete against each other, in my opinion, as well as the other team. You only get better when you see a guy going 7 innings. And Bundy even said this the other day, I want to go 8 innings. I want to be better than the guy the night before. That friendly competition makes your rotation that much better.
Yeah, it's cool to see these guys kind of have that competitive edge to, like you mentioned, one up the guy that was in front of them. You kind of mentioned it, health, and I kind of feel like this has been an issue, not an issue, but a subject that's been brought about throughout MLB with the shortened season last year, is pitchers' health coming into a full season. Pitchers not getting a lot of innings last year because obviously the shortened season. How much of that are you worried about? And, obviously that's pitching all over the place. And how can the Angels prepare themselves for something like that?
That's why I think this 6-man rotation and a number of clubs are going that route too today. And one thing interesting, and I didn't know this from Joe Madden, he said this today in the Zoom call, not only are they going with that 6-man rotation, but their normal bullpen day, they're going to have a simulated game. And that means you're going to face live hitting. So that way you're not overly strong, yet you're building up your arm strength in there, because most of these guys are not used to throwing with 5 days rest. They're used to 4 days rest, be every 5 days as far as a 5-man rotation. So everything's a little bit different for them. Every pitcher is going to be a little different this year. I think most managers are going to opt to be conservative as far as how far you stretch them out in the game. There are going to be some guys getting at 180, maybe close to 200. Not many of them will do that. But it's all about having that good quality 6, maybe 7 innings every time out. And with a 6-man rotation, you'll take a little bit of stress off your bullpen and not have to get so many innings out of there because you're going with a 6-man instead of a 5-man rotation.
How do you think you would have done with a 6-man rotation back when you played?
Well, being a sinker ball pitcher, I didn't like to be extra strong. And a number of times in a couple seasons at various points, we went with a 4-man rotation. I like that myself. There was 2 reasons why I liked it. 1, you get a better chance to get more wins because you're out there more often. And 2, I wasn't overly strong as a guy like an Alex Cobb, for instance. He's a guy that gets a lot of ground balls. The stronger he feels, the harder he thinks he's going to throw. And that means the baseball is going to flatten out a little bit more. So you want to be, especially if you're going to pitch the contact type pitcher, you don't want to be overly strong. And I look at this entire rotation. Outside of Shohei Otani, every one of these guys has the ability to get strikeouts, especially with their secondary pitches, but they're not going to be rushing the fastball up their upper 90s. So they're going to hit their spots with their fastball, get some soft contact on their fastball. So you want to be a little less strong, which doesn't, in some ways, it kind of contradicts what you're saying as far as trying to stay healthy, but you don't want to be overly strong because the harder you throw, the more the fastball flattens out. And we know how good hitters like to hit a flat, straight fastball out over the plate.
So we're in spring training. We're about almost a week away from the season starting exactly. Andrew Heaney took the mound today, gave up 5 runs, but that's kind of not the thing to look at when you're in spring training. What are you looking at when you're seeing guys pitch in spring training? Is it velocity? Is it command? Because obviously the other numbers, runs and hits, that necessarily isn't that important.
Especially for me in the Cactus League, you're going to give up some routine fly balls that get out, and the ground ball sometimes because the ground is so hard out there, it goes through for a hit. So you take numbers out of the way. I look for when I'm seeing from the pitchers so far is how the baseball's coming out of their hand, and like even Andrew Heaney today, early on, he had a tough time commanding his breaking ball, but as the game progressed, I don't know if you noticed, but he started throwing more breaking balls to get a better feel, and as it went along, much better feel for his stuff. His fastball. He's not upper 90s, but his fastball appears to be 98, 99 miles an hour because he hides it so well and it just jumps out of his hand. So that's why you see a lot of odd swings against his fastball. His changeup and breakable, there's going to have some separation as far as what you're looking for is the speeds. And if he's able to do that, he's going to be fine. I think he finally gets that next step because the stuff's there. All the hard work he put into this offseason from working with Rapsodo machine to be able to get better feel and see and read with his changeup is going to really be important as the season progresses.
So he's probably going to be the second day starter because it came out last week, I believe, that Dylan Bundy is going to be the opening day starter for the Angels. You mentioned it. He seems even better, looking better this year. But going back to last year, I think he was a little bit of a surprise for at least some Angel fans that weren't too sure about his past in Baltimore. What was it about last year that you saw that really stood out? And then what has he improved, since the last time you saw him at the end of last season to now in spring training?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I go back to for last season for Dylan Bundy. One thing that I see an incredibly competitive guy. One of the few guys you're seeing around baseball right now that aren't real happy when you see the manager getting on that phone and calling down to the bullpen. He's like, no, this is my game, which I love to see. Playing in the AL East, playing in Camden Yards. So there's a couple things going against you. All those ballparks really in the AL East are small hitters ballparks. He's more of a fly ball pitcher. So anything hit in the air, whether it's Fenway Park, Camden Yards, Yankee Stadium, the right center, right field, they're out of the ballpark. So same thing in Toronto. Toronto, when you think about it, is a great hitter's ballpark, Rogers Center. So every one of those yards is hitter's park, plus great lineups. You get them away from there. And the big thing for me, playing for Baltimore, they're in the rebuild mode for a number of seasons. Going in there every day knowing there's a really good chance you're not going to win the game. And that hurts because your mindset is always about winning and losing. So if you're going in there, all you're thinking about is piling up innings and strikeouts, maybe because you're not going to win the game. So he comes over to the Angels. He's the ace of a staff, and he knows he has a chance to win every game and it put the team into the postseason. That makes you that much better. And the feeling of his pitches so far today have been absolutely phenomenal as far as where he's been able to place it. His splitters, split finger changeups has been great. Curveball, excellent. Slider, good. And he spots his fastball, all four quadrants of the strike zone, as well as anybody. He can paint that fastball really, really well.
So he's obviously the top guy. And then I'm guessing Heaney's that number two guy. Another guy that's been having a really good spring training is, like you mentioned, Shohei Otani. Do you think they put him in that 3-4 spot? And then again, 6-man rotation kind of works out because I believe they said they're not going to hold him to like a Sunday start like they did last year, just kind of let it play out. Or do you kind of wait for him to kind of put the back in, maybe that sixth guy?
That's a great question because, what I've been trying to put together is I always want a rotation where the opposing club doesn't sit down and watch, hey, there's 2 or 3 lefties in a row, there's 3 righties in a row. So if you can interchange that quite a bit. So I'm guessing this is right now, as of today, Bundy, Heaney, Canning, Quintana, and then probably either Shohei or Cobb or flip-flop those guys around, one of the two. But what we saw the other day from Shohei was phenomenal. Leading off,
Yeah,
you got to remember that. Leading off a game, facing Blake Snell, lines a single right away. I mean, he's unbelievable what he's doing. And he almost hit a home run to left center as well later in that game and threw 102. 4 really good innings. Didn't have to step down and get somebody to come in to finish off an inning. He did it all himself. I think as the season progresses, depending on how this team's doing, and we all expect it, and what I'm seeing is this team being in that contention all the way through. And I firmly believe making the postseason that he moves around the rotation. You have that flexibility with off days that you can move and kind of, manipulate your rotation the way you want to going forward in those big games in August and September.
What do you think the biggest difference from Otani last year struggling pitching to coming back and almost out of nowhere because we weren't sure what we were going to get from him after last year and just having a great spring training?
I think he said it best. He was embarrassed the way he played last year, and he's upset that he hasn't performed better on all these kind of levels as well. I mean, whether it's how he feels that people in Japan view him back home or in the States, he wants to be that guy. He really worked hard to get everything going. He came into camp in incredible shape, but more so strong mental shape this year, where he felt everything was right. I'm seeing what I'm from the stress position thrown right now. It's taking a lot of pressure off him as far as instead of going through the full windup on the mound. Batter's box, he's not moving his feet. The pitchers are trying to pound him in with fastballs inside. He just kind of moves back and gets right back in or gets locked in there. So everything right now I'm seeing from him is a different focus in him right this year. He's already probably one of the fastest guys on the team, strongest guy on the team, throws the hardest on the team. He steals bases. I mean, it's incredible what he does on a baseball diamond. But now you're seeing a different focus from him, and he's confident. And he's healthy. Right now, he is completely healthy, and that's what you want to see from Shohei Otani.
If he does stay completely healthy, and I guess I'm asking for the pitching side and the offensive side, what are some realistic expectations Angel fans can have on this 2021 season?
Well, I'm guessing, if everything goes well, it's on the pitching side, you're talking 20, 22 starts. And the way he's throwing, boy, he might even be able to go out and hit for himself and get some extra runs as well. So I'm guessing a 10-game winner, 10, 11 games, if not more, 20, 25 home runs the way he's swinging the bat right now. I mean, these are potential phenomenal numbers. I mean, they're, Babe Ruth was the last person that ever did anything like that on the mound in the batter's box. So we're looking and I'm feeling kind of similar to what I did back in his rookie season, although there was always concern about his elbow, even back in his rookie season. So they were limited amount of starts and innings. You were going once every 7 days. That's not going to be the case. And I think what the conversation with Perry Manassian and Joe Madden and Shohei and his whole entire group, as far as this, it's like, hey, it's go time. We got to win. We're going to go how you feel. We're not going to necessarily give a program this way. Each day it could change. Each week it could change. So he wants, like everybody else on the pitching side, they want him and the staff to be creative, both during the game and in between starts as well.
So, obviously, like we mentioned before, there's a lot of talks about bringing in other pitchers, even till I think, pretty much until spring training started. But what are your thoughts? Someone asked, why don't you think Perry went after another pitcher like Odorizzi before he signed with the Houston? Why do you think they brought another person in, or do you think they felt comfortable with what they have in-house?
Well, I know there was conversation with the camp for Jake Odorizzi. I mean, he's a very solid pitcher. He doesn't give you necessarily length in the game, but it's very good quality pitching during the course of his game, whether it's 5 or 6 innings. That conversation was there. And, if you looked for an ace, the other guy was going to be Trevor Bauer. I don't know how – I mean, I know there was interest on both sides, but then it kind of went into either the New York Mets or the Dodgers. And I think at that point he was leaning all the way long with the Dodgers, I think. And then he's going to have a fantastic season there. So not many guys. I thought Walker would have been a guy that maybe there was some interest in as well. Quintana and the Alex Cobb, if they stay healthy. And Alex Cobb is a real interesting thing again, because he's had some issues with staying on the mound. But just a few years ago when he was under Joe Madden, he was really, really good. So you have arms that have the potential to being good. And I go back to what Perry Manassian said when he was hired as a general manager. I want to prevent runs. And if I do that, my entire staff will be better. This infield defense is phenomenal.
Right.
I mean, it really is a phenomenal defense. Anderson Simmons is one of my favorite all-time players, but I'm watching Jose Iglesias now at shortstop. I've been shocked how good he's been playing there. And I like the way he's swinging the bat. The emphasis also was get better all around in the outfield defense. And, all the defensive metrics, all the outfielders went down for them last year, and right, including Mike Trout. And he's pushed himself to be a better outfielder in center field. Dexter Fowler's definitely a guy he's a winner. He won a World Series. I mean, if you go back to the Cubbies, the whole thing is he go, we go. So he's a spark plug. And then Upton, Justin's been looking really, really good, not only at the plate, but I'm seeing much better routes in the outfield. And if you go back 4, 5, 6 years ago, he was a solid outfielder. The last few years, hey, we got to be honest, he hasn't been good out there in the outfield. Jeter Hines, our first base coach, has it's almost like a disciple on outfield defense. And he's emphasized that. And then Juan Lagares is, I mean, he's off the charts. I mean, he's a phenomenal defender. So, and Taylor Ward's been really good out there. So there's some real good battles as far as extra players, but the defense in the outfield and the defense in the infield behind the plate, Kurt Suzuki is going to make a huge difference. Max Stassi, that all comes into play, which makes your entire pitching staff that much better.
And here's another question too. And you mentioned a lot of those names, but which one are you most excited about of the new additions to the roster?
Ooh, that's a great question. Like I said, Jose Iglesias has been even a bigger surprise than anybody I've seen so far. But it's easy to say Shohei Otani is like getting a new guy on your roster right now, the way he's playing. But a full season with Anthony Rendon is going to be huge. I mean, it was such a sprint of a season. He says the same thing last year. It didn't feel like I was around the guys that much. And he's a huge leader. And I love what he said about Joe Madden. When I was on the other side, I thought Joe Madden was a nut. And now that I'm on the same side as him, I'm like, there's a lot of things he says and preaches that's going to make me a better player. It's going to make everyone else around. But above all, that whole mantra in camp is all about that team chemistry and that winning mentality. And I'm telling you what, I've been on some clubs that were really, really good that didn't perform well, but I was on some clubs that had that right chemistry. And of course, we won a World Series in '85 with that team in Kansas City. It comes into play a lot. A lot of people discount, team chemistry, saying if you have all the talent, but unless you're in that clubhouse and realizing if your goal every day is to win, no matter who wins the game, who's going to be the star, that's what makes everyone better. And I think this team is going to be way, way better this season because of that mentality going forward.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you talk about Rendon because you're hearing about Otani during spring training. You're hearing about Trout during spring training. You're hearing about the new additions. It's like Rendon to me is kind of underneath the radar. You're not hearing a lot about him through the season or through the spring training, but he's going to show up when the season starts, just like he did after the slow start last year. Two young guns that you kind of mentioned earlier that I want to talk about a little bit is Reed Detmers and Chris Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
What have you seen from both of them that just stands out to you and says, wow?
First of all, I'll go with Reed Detmers because I'll go with Chris Rodriguez in a minute because I love this kid. Reed is what we would all say has pitchability. He already has 4 quality pitches. He played in a very tough college conference. He's already polished. And that's the thing I like about him. He knows what he's doing. He's getting a little bit better, more crisp with his slider to go along with that big curveball and changeup. Fastball velocity is going to consistently sit around that 92, 95 range. And he can pitch to all 4 quadrants of the strike zone with all his pitches. Doesn't get rattled, always under control, and throws strikes. You got a chance to win every game. He's one of those guys right now that could win at the major league level right now. Wow. Because his stuff is that good. He's not, like I said, he's not going to throw 100 miles an hour. But what I'm seeing is a kind of a reverse trend in baseball where clubs are looking at guys that can stay healthy, stay on the mound, that can throw strikes, that can go through a lineup 3 times, 4 times. He has the stuff that he can go through a lineup 3 or 4 times, in my opinion, right this moment. So that's going to be huge going forward. You're going to see him at some point meaningful innings for the Angels this year. There's no doubt in my mind that's going to happen. Now, Chris Rodriguez, it's funny because I text people all the time, and even guys like David Vassay who writes and does stuff for the Dodgers, he goes, wow, you never say anything that highly about a young player like you did on Twitter about Chris Rodriguez. But when I watch him pitch, I don't even care if he's giving up a run or a home run or whatever. He has an edge to him. And his fastball moves. I kind of equate, like, he's one of those guys that you see had been coming up through the Dodgers organization, Dustin May or Walker Buehler, where you just go, wow, that fastball not only is firm, it's upper 90s, but it has great movement through the strike zone. He's got a really good breaking ball, a solid changeup as well. His fastball disappears in the strike zone. And the one thing I love about him when I mention those type of guys like Walker Buehler, he's got an edge to him. He doesn't want to give up a run. He doesn't want a hitter swinging comfortably in the batter's box against him. So for me, that edge like that is such a perfect guy on your team, whether it's out of the bullpen or eventually maybe you'd be a starter down the road. He needs, in my opinion, to be part of this team going forward because he brings a big-time element, even though he's a kid. Now, health has been an issue with him. He hasn't pitched a whole lot. But already you can see it in his mind and his mannerisms and his body language. He knows he belongs in a major league mound. If you could do that as a young player, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, Chris being a a past guest on the All Angels podcast, so we definitely are rooting for him coming up this season. But with both of those guys, Reed Detmers getting drafted obviously out of Louisville, but not having a minor league season because of the COVID, and then Chris Rodriguez having what little time in minor leagues kind of cut short due to injury. Are you worried about these guys in Reed's case not seeing any professional hitting until the Angels alternate side, and then Chris too just kind of getting back to it? Does that worry you at all as far as them making an appearance this year?
I think it's always something people will think about, because maybe Joe Adell was rushed last year and things didn't work out with him, whether at the plate or in the field. That that's always a possibility. But the only thing I can always go back to is what I dealt with. In 1984, Brett Saberhagen and I were both in Double-A, and that's as high as we had to go through the minor leagues. We didn't even play in Triple-A. And that year in spring training in '84, our manager Dick Hauser looked at us, and Danny Jackson was 22 years old. I was 21, and Sayes was 20. So you got three guys going to be potentially in your rotation that have basically zero experience in minor league baseball, but they see the kind of body language you got and what kind of a player you can be, that there was going to be no stress as far as taking that chance. They looked at our makeup and go, that's what I do when I look at Reed and Chris. I look at their makeup. They're not going to stress out. They're not going to panic if things don't go well initially. They're going to fight. They're going to figure it out. That's what we had there in Kansas City. I saw that with the New York Mets a few years ago when they were going to DeGrom and Syndergaard and Matz. You got to take chances. If you have the right guys with the right arms, it doesn't matter how much you throw down there. Now, hitters, I think it's a little bit different. You got to get seasoning more at bats down in the minor leagues. But if you have the right pitching core and these guys have the right makeup, and I see that with Reed and Chris, there's no reason for me to believe that they need to throw a lot more down there, because they're already mentally ready with their skills and their talent to be able to be successful in the major leagues. If that makes any sense to you.
No, it does. And you're right, because I think you mentioned with Joe, people feeling he got rushed up last year. I think people are kind of like, well, let's not do that to these young guys that are obviously very promising, and Reed and Chris. You've seen a lot of the teams in the division in spring training, obviously not Houston because they're out in Florida, but how do you feel this rotation, with the guys that we know are going to be the 6 guys right now, stack up against other rotations in the division?
Well, I think right now you can make a case is probably as strong, if not stronger, than anybody in the rotation, any rotation in the division. Now, Oakland, if their young pitchers stay healthy, and that's always Luzardo and Puck, those guys are phenoms in my opinion, but have they been out there enough to be able to show them an eye? The same thing. So, excuse me, they got the arms, but they got to stay healthy themselves. So right now, in my opinion, the Angels, they stack up with anybody in the division. Now, if you put up against San Diego or the Dodgers in the National League West, it's a little bit different. But I think in this division, even most clubs, if you look in the American League, I think you're seeing some shift in talent, especially pitching wise. National League a little bit stronger, and look at the NL East as well. But in the American League, as far as overall stats, I think the Angels match up favorably, and obviously with their lineup, they're as good as any lineup in all of baseball, and defensively the same way. So all those intangibles put together for me for a chance for this club to have a really special season. And I think the whole conversation, and I know Trouty's been talking about, I text him all the time, getting to the postseason. That's all we've heard. And Trout has that look like, you know what? I'm going to will these guys. I'm going to make the rest of my teammates better because I'm going to the postseason. He's going to the postseason this year because he's going to do special things, and the rest of the guys around him will do the same.
We are definitely hoping for that postseason berth this year, regardless if it's extended playoffs or not. I know that's still kind of up in the air until obviously like last year, the last minute. But where do you see the division win? Not necessarily the Angels, but whatever team wins this division, what do you think their win total will be at the end of the year?
I'm still thinking probably 92, 93 wins. I think even possibly 91, because it's going to be pretty packed in there. The top 3 teams are going to be the same as we've seen in the past. It's going to be the Astros, although they've taken a hit using Springer, and their starting staff is so young and inexperienced. So, and the same thing with their bullpen. They could be really good if Bregman's back to being healthy and Altuve does his stuff. They brought back Brantley. Carlos Correa is a phenomenal player himself, and Alvarez is back. and he's healthy from what I understand. So they're very, very good. And the A's, I thought initially losing Marcus Semien, Liam Hendricks, they lost Grossman. I thought they were taking a step back. And then, as Oakland always does, they take a couple steps forward. They bring in Elvis Andrews. They get Trevor Rosenthal. They get Mitch Moreland. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to be very, very formidable once again. So it's going to be a great race. As always, comes down to health. But I think if you look at 1 through 26 at this moment, the Angels are the team that has the most talent. Now, they haven't won in a while, and that really is a big thing. When you've won like Oakland and you won like Astros, if you get off to a slow start, in your mind, hey, we've won before. We're going to turn this around. Now, the Angels haven't been there since 2014. They got to get back that winning mentality. You have Dexter Fowler as a World Series champ. You got Kurt Suzuki's a World Series champ. You got Anthony Rendon, a World Series champ. You got Albert Pujols, a World Series champ. So all those guys right now have known what it takes to win a World Series. That's going to be important for those guys to carry that on for the rest of the players, whether it's, Iglesias at shortstop, David Fletcher, who's a phenomenal player. I love that kid, by the way. I think Upton's going to have a great year. Walshy at first base with Albert Pujols. So all those things are coming into play because you got a lot of winners on there. And I'll tell you, when you have World Series champs around you, everyone kind of gravitates toward you.
You kind of mentioned too the slow start and how maybe if you're not used to winning, that can kind of get into your mind. How you look at the first month of the season in April, you have obviously you lead off with the White Sox, and then then you play Houston, then Minnesota's in there, and you have a lot of good teams. Toronto's in there. What do you think the Angels need to come away with this next month? 500, a couple games above 500 to kind of keep that mental, like, hey, we can actually do this. We can make a run.
Well, you even go back to that short sprint of a season last year. If you take away what happened in that first month where you had 14 blown saves, big difference because they were the best. They had the best record that last, 20 some games in the month of September, except for that last series at Dodger Stadium when everything fell apart for them. In the end, they weren't able to make the postseason, so nobody was really playing. So that's a different story. Getting off to a hot start is huge. And you mentioned the schedule's a tough one. You got Kansas City in there as well. And they've retooled. They look pretty strong themselves. So there's no games in there where you think, okay, we can, go out and beat up on this team and put together some good numbers on the offensive and on the pitching side. It's going to be a battle. You got a 4-game set to start with the White Sox, and that's a really, really good team with really good pitching themselves. But it's a team, if the Angels play well, they can win that series 3 games 1. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't think you ever settle for a 500 month. I say you go for a winning month, a huge number of wins, and then you go forward because then you can, as you go along, you figure out what guys need some days off here and there, how you mess around with the rotation, who sets up who down in the bullpen, because eventually you love guys in your bullpen to have set roles and they're comfortable roles. So all those things will be in big time play if you get off to a good start. If you don't get off to a good start, then you would start falling back on, well, we haven't won in a while. How do we consistently win? So that's where Joe Madden being around the team the whole year. 60-game schedule last year. Everyone was different parts of the stadium working out and talking. Now they're a little bit more comfortable, like we all around the country right now, being closer together. It's going to make Joe Madden, which he's at his best when he's able to get the most out of his players. And that's what you're going to see going with this club, getting the most out of his talent going forward.
Mark, I want to thank you again. This has been awesome. Really, really, really looking forward to hearing you guys, seeing you guys on opening day with you, Hosey, and Darren Sutton, the new addition. Thank you again. Really looking forward again to this season and really appreciate you taking some time out.
Man, I appreciate it, man. I'm hoping at some point we'll have a Christmas in June again. I hope they do stuff like that at the stadium. I'm going to get D. Sut or Matty V to be able to wear something. I know that. I never give up, man. I never give up.
And Darren said in the interview, I asked him about that question, the chances of him being in some kind of a costume throughout the year, and he says he's 100% for it. So if you need any evidence, I can send you a clip just to be like, hey, you said something.
Oh, good. That's perfect. I really appreciate that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to be there opening day with some fans back in there, probably 9,000, 10,000 fans. Eventually work with 33% to 67% going forward. It's going to be so much fun. The players are going to be way better playing with those fans at home, and I know they're going to love being at the ballpark.
Again, thank you, Gubi. Just kicking off our Angels preview week, and tomorrow we will have Fabian Ardaya of The Athletic join us as well, and to get his point of view about what's going on in spring training and the upcoming season. So definitely same place, same time tomorrow. So Mark, again, thank you very much. I've been Daniel Garcia, and this has been another edition of the All Angels podcast.